And Dr. Ken Tudor talks about this at Paw Nation on his article, The Forgotten History of Pet Food. Anyway, remember Spam? I know I do. My mom certainly served it. We didn't have the biggest budget either, so we had to eat Spam. But Spam was invented in the 1930s, and 65% of their sales were during the war because they were being sent to the U.S. military. Now, here's what happened. Think about what they had to do to create the Spam, okay? That's not real meat. If you've ever eaten it, it's not real meat. It's not even close. The fact that it rhymes with ham is almost criminal, okay? So in the late 50s, a major pet food company discovered a method for, kind of like what they did with Sam, for taking hot liquid soup of meat, fat, and grain scraps, okay, and injecting them through another heat process, popping the fluid into light, kibbled, dry food of any shape. Preferably one that you find appealing and one that you think looks nice because you're the one buying the food for your dog. He's not picking, okay? They called it kibble, and it did not become widely available until the 1930s, which incidentally is when cancer started going on the rise for dogs. That's right when companies producing grain-inclusive human foods finally figured out something super important. Kibble was a great way to make a profit off waste products not fit for human consumption. They had absolutely no concern for the actual nutrition value for dogs. It's just dogs, right? Which leads me to how the industry got regulated, or lack thereof, as you will soon see. During the pet food boom of the 1970s, the industry titans and the U.S. government were especially close. Again, this is according to a paper done from the Harvard University. So close, get this, the chairman of Ralston Purina, we know who that is, right? Their board of directors, his name was Earl L. Butz, effectively swapped jobs with the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Clifford Morris Hardin. This effectively meant that the national guidelines for pet nutrition originated with Ralston Purina's own research department. That's kind of like the wolf guarding the hen house, right? Again, from the New York Times. No one seemed to mind the industry's self-regulation. More likely, no one noticed. And if they had, someone might have pointed out the very same regulations governing cattle feed or poultry feed then are also governing your dog's food now. I'm going to explain this in just a second. See, the Association of American Feed Control Officials, called AFCO, note it's feed control, not food control, was established in the early 1900s. And let me tell you the problem with that. First and foremost, according to their website, each state tries to follow their guidelines as it relates to pet food. Yet the AAFCO has no statutory authority to actually regulate the pet products. Like, they can't really punish you for not following their guidelines. And the rules being followed were created in the early 1900s when the organization was created, i.e., before commercial dog food. These regulations were meant for guiding the standards of livestock feed only. And the rules that the states are following right now were designed for the best way to rapidly fatten up the animal, which is pretty much the opposite of what you want to do for your dog's life, right? I mean, if you're like me, you're not just trying to keep your dog alive. You want your dog to thrive. Yet, since many pet food manufacturers will go to any lengths to fill their food with the cheapest sources of protein they can find, you probably won't be surprised to discover the other ingredients in dog food, they're not much better. And here's the very worst part. Honesty definitely does not seem to be the best policy. For example, many brands use photos implying they're using food-grade ingredients on the bag, while actually using feed ingredients inside the bag or can. This is referenced on the website The Truth About Pet Food. Even though there is a AAFCO guideline stating they cannot do this, clearly states a vignette, graphic, or pictorial representation on a pet food or specialty pet food label shall not misrepresent the contents of the package, right from page 137 of their own publication, many still do. Because they know you don't know the rules. Now, don't worry, you're not alone in this. Very few people do. I know. Until recently, I didn't either. The same rules big brands are bending, banking on our mainstream ignorance. Let's face it, most people don't even know what to look for. Not like you do with people food anyway. For example, this bag says grilled USA beef steak flavor for a reason. The key word is flavor. If they'd said what the photo implies, beef steak, then grilled steak would have to be in the bag. But it doesn't say that. It says flavor. Yet the photo makes you think there must be some grilled steak in there somewhere, right? Wrong. And when you look a little closer, it's right there for any savvy dog owner, especially one like you, to see. The only meat ingredient in this dog's food is listed as beef and bone meal. That's it. In fact, the ingredients are listed with ground yellow corn and soybean meal being above beef and bone meal. So basically, the way the label works, that means those are the two most important ingredients in this dog food, corn and soybean meal. And let's face it, at 42.5 cents a pound, do you really have to be a rocket scientist to know that's not chicken? I mean, for those of you who don't know, any Oprahs out there maybe, while you can get the cheapest chicken out there is about $1.50 a pound, some people like shop at Whole Foods are getting boneless, skinless, organic chicken breasts for about $8.99 a pound. Okay? There's no chicken out there that's 42.5 cents. So how is that even possible? Many times it's because the actual meat content is only 3%. And that's dirty secret number one. It's what I call the 3% rule. According to FDA and the AAFCO labeling guidelines, which you can find at the FDA's website, if the name of the food includes the phrase with ingredient, like with beef, with chicken, with lamb, that named ingredient must not be less than 3% of the total weight. So in other words, a dog food manufacturer could have a label that says Aunt Susie's Wholesome Stew with lamb, and as long as the lamb is 3% of the ingredients by weight, they are following the rules. Really? 3%. You don't find that a tad bit deceptive? Think about it this way. If a traditional dry cup of dog food on average weighs 3.21 ounces, with the 3% rule applied, that means if you give your dog 1 cup of that dog food, it would only have 0.09% meat in it. So what about the other 99.1%? Well, it can vary. And let me tell you why that's so scary. Have you ever heard of 4D animals? It stands for dead, dying, deceased, and or disabled animals. And there are no laws, no regulations, not one guideline, nothing saying 4D animals cannot be added to your dog's food. That's dirty secret number 2. Even on bags labeled premium or gourmet. Just wait until we get to that part. You just wait. This again comes from the FDA website. Now, some people will still argue no one has been able to prove a big brand did or does this. Even though past AFA-FCO President Hirsch Pendel admits it can happen on camera. Listen to this.
These are Holsteins here. Hirsch Pendel is the current president of the Association of Feed Control Officials, a group made up of North American agriculture and animal feed specialists. AFCO writes ingredient definitions and suggests nutritional guidelines for pet food makers. Pet food industry. Pendel says he's not aware of any written law or regulation at any level, specifically prohibiting the use of rendered products which contain dead cats and dogs.
Aesthetically, it may not be acceptable, but nutritionally, it's still protein.
Can we tell what's in pet food just by looking at the label?
There's no way to really tell that because if the ingredient says meat and bone meal, you don't know if that's cattle or sheep or horse or fluffy.
I think that's horrifying. According to Natural News, these meats that he's referring to are usually condemned in whole or part for human consumption. Okay? The parts, this is what really bothered me. It's not so much that it's not things we don't want to eat, but it's things that I don't think anyone should eat. Out-of-date supermarket meats, including their plastic wrappers, cut away cancerous tissue, and fetal tissue, which is very high in hormones. And this comes from a Natural News site that has over 7 million readers. And the FDA certainly does not deny it. They actually, this is the disturbing part, have guidelines allowing it. You see here on their guideline from their website, 675.400, where they talk about all the nasty ingredients they will allow to be in the food. If you go to their website and look up 675.100, that rule, what it says is the FDA does not object to the diversion to animal feed, which is your dog's food, of human food adulterated, meaning it has it, with rodent, roach, or bird excreta. Really? Goes on to 675.200 and talks about the different kinds of foods that we're talking about here, the ones that they allow in there. And they talk about industrial chemicals and natural toxicants, filth, microbiological contamination. It's just unbelievable to me. At one point, they had so many rumors that people were saying that the rendered byproducts contained dead dogs and cats that the FDA decided to conduct a study looking for the drug they used to euthanize your dogs. And they found it. They found it in the dog's food. Okay? Now that doesn't mean anything, because if you're like me, a real dog lover at this point, you should just be thinking, regardless of this being true, of being in my dog's food or not, regardless if that's ever happened, the fact that there are specific guidelines allowing diseased animals or pesticide-laden foods to be approved dog food ingredients, massive health risk in my opinion, is absolutely disgusting and 100% unacceptable. Sadly, it gets worse. The dirty secret number 3, commercially made food labeled premium, gourmet, and all natural can be just as toxic as the regular brands of dog food. The bottom line, they can legally contain the exact same ingredients as cheaper brands of dog food. In fact, the FDA makes it abundantly clear anybody can label their food however they want. Clearly stating, from their website, products labeled as premium or gourmet are not required to contain any different or higher quality ingredients, nor are they held up to any higher nutritional standards than are any other complete and balanced products. I mean, seriously? I'm sorry, it's crazy to me that that's the case. What's being included in these types of products is not what you expect when reading words like premium, right? For example, one of the most powerful and toxic preservatives in your dog's food is called Ethoxyquin. This deadly preservative is what allows pet stores to keep your dog's food on the shelf for up to 2 years before having to sell it to you. Which makes it convenient for you, true, and again, very profitable for the pet companies, but it's pretty disastrous for your dog's health. And this is coming from the WholeDogJournal.com site, which I think is a phenomenal resource of information. It's been linked to cancers, severe allergies, and even a full immune system collapse. And while no, you won't find it on your dog's label, you won't, sadly, that doesn't mean it's not in there. And that's loophole number 1. It can be added before they receive the rest of what I call filth to create your dog's food. So it's just one reason why Dr. Alfred Plushner, a world-famous veterinarian, says, long-term effects of commercial diet is that dogs become biochemical cripples. That's the word, cripples, with no resistance to disease. Research has proven dogs being fed this way can experience all these different types of reactions with kidney cancer, bladder cancer, chronic diarrhea, spleen cancer, leukemia, all kinds of things, hair loss, it goes on and on. Shockingly, there is nothing you can do about any of this except not buy it.